The mirror fogs over before she even has the chance to look up. Steam curls along the glass like morning breath, hiding the face she usually meets with quiet judgment. Somewhere behind the mist, she knows her reflection is waiting. The same tired eyes, the same mouth rehearsing silent arguments she never wins. Outside, a bus sighs down the street. The city hums its indifferent rhythm. Engines, footsteps, a door closing somewhere. But in this small bathroom, the first conversation of the day has already begun. It starts, as it always does, with a sigh. You should have gone to bed earlier. You're already behind. Why can't you just get it together? She isn't saying the words out loud, but they shape her breath, tightening her chest before she even touches her toothbrush. This is how the mornings begin, not with breakfast or sunlight, but with a verdict. Some mornings the mirror feels heavier than she is. She studies the droplets sliding down the glass, each one racing the other, dissolving her outline until she's only a blur. There's something merciful about that, being briefly erased from her own scrutiny. Still, habit makes her wipe a small circle clear with the edge of a towel. The face that appears feels like both a stranger and a witness. I've had entire conversations today, she thinks, and none left my mouth. It's not anger she hears in her inner voice. It's exhaustion dressed as discipline, the kind of self-talk that pretends to be motivation. For years she believed being hard on herself meant she cared, that high standards equaled self-respect. But lately, it's begun to sound more like a courtroom than a pep talk. The evidence piles up fast. A late reply, a forgotten errand, an awkward silence in yesterday's meeting. Each small mistake becomes an exhibit. The trial never ends. The jury never leaves. She leans closer to the mirror, searching for something. Proof that she's still improving, still earning her own approval. But all she finds are shadows beneath her eyes, and the faint reminder that yesterday's makeup didn't quite come off. For a moment, she closes her eyes. The sound of the faucet running becomes a kind of static. She listens to it the way you might listen to ocean waves through a wall. Faint, constant, impossible to stop. Maybe this is how we disappear, she thinks. Not through one grand mistake, but through 1,000 small scoldings that drain us one by one. The mirror fogs again. The face fades, and something inside her, small, stubborn, almost childlike, whispers, "It doesn't have to start like this." That thought alone surprises her. It's soft where the others are sharp, curious where the others accuse. She wraps herself in a towel and stands there, still dripping, as if waiting for permission to be kind. The room smells faintly of lavender soap and clean cotton. Outside, the light shifts across the window pane, slow and forgiving. It's an ordinary morning. Nothing miraculous has happened. But the way she lingers, the way she hesitates before meeting her reflection again, feels different. Maybe, she wonders, the point isn't to stop thinking, but to start listening differently, to notice the tone, the temperature of her own words. She leans forward once more, leaving the towel on the counter. The mirror clears just enough to catch her eyes. There she is. Not the flawless version she keeps chasing, not the tired one she criticizes. Just the person standing here now, breathing. The inner voice rises again, ready with its usual line. You're already late. But this time, another thought interrupts, gentle, almost amused. Maybe that's okay. For the first time all morning, she smiles, barely, and it changes everything. The smile is small, imperfect, but it softens the air. The faucet drips once, twice, then stills. The city hum filters in again, distant but steady, reminding her that the world is still turning, even when she's not performing for it. The mirror stays quiet, holding her gaze. She doesn't have to fix herself right now. She doesn't have to win the argument. All she has to do is notice. Maybe tomorrow, this reflection won't feel like a verdict. The thought lingers, warm and fragile, as she turns off the light and steps into the day. The mirror waits for her again that night. The day has been long, not disastrous, just full of tiny stumbles that stack like unwashed dishes. A half-finished report, a friend's text she forgot to answer, a tone in a meeting she replays on loop, convinced she sounded defensive. By the time she gets home, her shoulders carry the quiet weight of everything she's judged herself for. The apartment feels too still, the kind of stillness that lets the inner noise grow loud. She drops her bag by the door and stands in the kitchen, unsure of what to do first. Eat, clean, collapse. The mind answers before the body does. You should have handled that better. You should have spoken up. You should have been calmer. It's remarkable how quickly should can drain the color from a room. She catches her reflection in the microwave door, warped, faint, slightly distorted, and it feels like seeing a version of herself mid-sentence, frozen mid-argument. The same conversation she's been having with herself all day continues. A trial with no recess. If someone else spoke to her this way, she would call it unkind. But when the voice lives inside her head, it passes for honesty. Some people fight traffic. She fights every version of herself. She can almost picture it. A long courtroom table inside her mind, each chair occupied by a different her. The confident one, the anxious one, the one who always says yes, the one who always regrets it later. They talk over each other, each certain they know what's best. At the head of the table sits the judge, critical, weary, relentless. She knows that voice too well. It sounds like discipline, but it's really fear. Fear of being unworthy, fear of losing control, fear that without constant correction she'll collapse into failure. What she rarely notices is how tired that judge sounds. Not cruel, just exhausted from trying to keep everything perfect. She takes a breath, rubbing her temples as if that could quiet the debate. The hum of the refrigerator joins in, a low reminder that life goes on outside the noise. She wishes she could tell the voice, "You've done enough, you can rest now." But instead she moves through her evening like someone trying not to trip a wire. Dinner, dishes, scroll, sigh. Later, brushing her teeth, she catches herself frowning again at the mirror. The same critical glance, the same tired question. Why can't I just be better? It's not a question that seeks an answer. It's an accusation dressed as self-improvement. For a second, she sets the toothbrush down and studies her own face. She notices how her eyes look when they're searching for fault. It hits her then. This habit of self-criticism isn't just about mistakes. It's about control. If she blames herself first, no one else can hurt her. That realization lands like a quiet confession. The voice isn't really an enemy. It's a scared protector, convinced cruelty is safer than disappointment. She leans forward, whispering into the foggy glass, "You don't have to yell to keep me safe." The words sound strange, tender, almost absurd, but they soften something tight in her chest. The mirror doesn't answer, of course, but in the silence that follows, the apartment feels less hostile, more like a place where she can breathe. It's human to want to do better. It's human to stumble. But somewhere along the way, she confused self-discipline with self-blame. She remembers how Albert Ellis wrote that it isn't events that disturb us, but our view of them. Maybe it isn't the mistake that hurts most. It's the sentence we attach to it, the verdict we keep repeating. She looks again at her reflection, now faint and flickering under the bathroom light. "You're not broken," she murmurs, "just tired of the noise." The face staring back almost smiles, not out of triumph, but relief, as if the mirror itself is grateful to be used for seeing, not judging. She turns off the light, letting the darkness settle around her like a soft blanket. In the quiet, the voices fade a little. Not gone, just gentler. Tomorrow they'll probably return, But maybe she'll remember this moment, the small mercy of calling herself human before calling herself wrong. Because healing doesn't begin when the arguments stop. It begins the first time you realize you don't have to keep winning them. The morning starts like any other. Gray light slipping through the blinds, the hum of a city half awake. She moves through her small apartment on autopilot, the way people do when they're trying not to feel too much. Coffee, shower, mirror, the mirror again. Always the mirror. It greets her with a faint fog, soft enough to blur the sharp edges of her own reflection. For a few seconds, she lets herself exist in that blur. Then habit takes over. She wipes the glass clear and meets her own eyes. There's that quiet flicker, recognition mixed with fatigue, the look of someone who's been arguing with herself for too long. She reaches for her toothbrush, and in that tiny, unthinking moment, it slips from her hand. The sound is small, plastic clinking against tile, but it lands like an accusation. Before she can stop herself, the word slips out. Idiot. Not shouted, just whispered, automatic, the way you might sigh when the elevator door closes too soon. But it's sharp enough to sting. For a second, she freezes. The word hangs in the air like a slap that echoes longer than it should. She stares at the toothbrush lying by her foot and realizes something she's never noticed before. This isn't just a word she says. It's a reflex. A habit stitched so deep she doesn't even feel it forming anymore. And then, something inside her shifts. It's not dramatic. No music swells, no tears fall. It's quieter than that. A small click of truth. A realization so simple it almost feels silly. If I spoke to anyone else this way, they'd walk away. The thought lands like a pebble in water, and the ripples spread fast. She kneels down to pick up the toothbrush, and as she does, she catches a glimpse of herself in the lower part of the mirror, bent, off balance, reaching. The image feels metaphorical, though she doesn't mean it to. That's how she's been living, always bending toward her own mistakes. When she stands up again, the mirror is still foggy around the edges, and somehow that feels right. For once, she doesn't rush to wipe it clean. The blur feels merciful, like grace made visible. She looks at her reflection and whispers, half to herself, half to the tired face in the glass. You don't deserve that. The sound of her own voice surprises her. It's softer than usual, less like a verdict, more like a truce. She sets the toothbrush on the sink and leans against the counter, letting the quiet stretch. Outside, the world is already moving. Car doors slamming, children shouting, a dog barking somewhere. But in here, something new is happening. Silence, without accusation. Maybe this is what people mean by a breaking point, she thinks. Not a collapse, but a moment when the truth becomes too obvious to ignore. You can't keep talking to yourself like this. It's not guilt she feels now, it's grief. Grief for the mornings lost to judgment, the years spent mistaking cruelty for discipline. She turns on the faucet and watches the water run. The sound fills the space, a soft reminder that motion doesn't always mean noise. The steam rises again, curling upward, fogging the mirror completely this time. Behind the haze, she can no longer see her face. And oddly, it brings her peace. Because maybe this vanishing into softness is what she's been needing all along. Permission to stop scrutinizing, to stop performing perfection for her own reflection. She lets the water run until it's warm, then cups her hands beneath it, feeling the weight, the temperature, the realness. Her voice returns, gentler now. You're trying, she says. That counts. The words feel awkward in her mouth, like learning a new language. But they're true. They feel true. In that moment, she understands something Albert Ellis once wrote. Our emotions follow our beliefs. For years, she's believed she must be flawless to be safe. Maybe the real safety lies in being forgiving instead. She looks up one last time. The fog begins to thin, and her reflection slowly returns. Not perfect, not glowing, just human. But she sees it differently now, not as a verdict, but as proof that she's still here. The mirror doesn't judge, it only reflects what stands before it. Maybe the cruelty was never in the glass at all. Maybe it was just in the way she looked. She exhales, long and full. The sound is almost like relief. In the quiet that follows, she makes a small promise. Nothing grand, just a sentence that feels like a seed. Tomorrow, I'll try to be on my own side. Then she turns off the light, leaving the mirror to rest in darkness. For once, it feels like both of them deserve the break. That evening, the air feels softer. Maybe it's the light, that honey-colored hour when everything looks briefly forgiving. She sits by the window with a cup of tea, steam rising in gentle ribbons. The mirror across the room catches part of her reflection, but she doesn't look away this time. She's learning to meet her own gaze without flinching. There's no sudden transformation, no perfect calm, just quiet curiosity. The inner argument has lost some of its volume. The words still come. You should have done more. You should have known better. But they sound faint now, like echoes from another room.
She remembers something she read once, a quote from Albert Ellis. It's not the events that disturb us, but what we tell ourselves about them. At first she thought that sounded too simple. How could thoughts matter more than what actually happens? But lately she's begun to see what he meant. She thinks of yesterday's dropped toothbrush, that small, ridiculous trigger for the word idiot. The moment keeps replaying, but this time she views it differently. She sees not a failure, but a pattern, a habit of believing that mistakes must mean something about her worth. Maybe, she realizes, the habit isn't the problem. It's the belief hiding inside it. The belief that being hard on herself keeps her safe, makes her responsible, makes her good. She takes a sip of tea, letting the warmth travel down her chest. What if reason could sound like kindness? The question floats through her like music. That's what Ellis was really trying to say, wasn't it? Rationality isn't cold. It's compassionate clarity. It's saying, that was a mistake, but it doesn't make me unworthy. It's choosing truth without cruelty. She looks back at the mirror and decides to test it. Out loud, she says, I was tired this morning. I dropped the toothbrush. That's all. Her reflection doesn't protest. The words land gently in the air, simple, factual, human. No judgment, no exaggeration, just reality, spoken kindly. And that's when she feels it, the quiet click of peace. Not relief exactly, but the absence of attack. Maybe this is what self-respect really is. Not inflating your worth, but refusing to deflate it every time something goes wrong. She tries another thought, just to see if it holds. I prefer to be more patient with myself, she says. But I don't have to be. The shift is subtle, but it opens space in her chest. Prefer instead of must. Freedom instead of pressure. Ellis called it disputing irrational beliefs, but to her, it feels more like making friends with reason. The kind of reasoning that sounds like Fred Rogers might have written it on a note for her fridge. You don't have to be perfect to be kind to yourself. She smiles, and the mirror smiles back. Small, shy, like they're both surprised. It's not about silencing the inner critic, she realizes. It's about retraining it, turning it from a prosecutor into a protector, teaching it a new tone. For years, she's believed that softness meant weakness, but now she sees softness as skill, the art of staying open without collapsing. She finishes her tea and rinses the mug. The warm water against her hands feels grounding, like a small proof that she's here, alive, capable of simple good things. The mirror catches her again as she passes. This time, she doesn't analyze. She just nods, the way you'd nod to a friend you trust. Rational doesn't mean detached, she thinks. It means fair. It means telling yourself the truth, the whole truth, not just the harsh half. That's the lesson Ellis gave her tonight. Logic and love are not opposites. They're partners. And maybe, she muses, this is how healing begins. Not with grand affirmations or glittering confidence, but with one honest sentence spoken in a gentler voice. The city outside glows in the dusk. She turns off the bathroom light and the reflection fades into the dark. But inside, the voice that used to scold now feels more like a companion. For the first time in a long while, her thoughts feel like a place she can live in. And as the last of the daylight slips away, she whispers the truth she's finally ready to believe. I can still grow without tearing myself down. The next morning, she wakes with the faintest sense of space inside her chest. Not joy exactly, but breathing room. The light filters through the blinds in soft stripes, landing across the mirror she once avoided. It gleams quietly, like it's waiting for her to notice. She sits up slowly, her hair tangled, the bedsheet creased with dreams she can't quite remember.
There's no grand plan for the day, no vow to reinvent herself, no spreadsheet of self-improvement goals. Just one quiet promise. Today, I'll practice speaking to myself like someone I love. In the kitchen, she pours coffee and listens to the kettle hum. The mirror by the hallway catches her reflection mid-motion. It's unflattering, sleepy, puffy eyes, a t-shirt from yesterday. And somehow, that feels like permission to relax. For the first time, she realizes how much of her energy has been spent defending herself against her own thoughts. Each should and must was a tiny battle. Each harsh comment a wound disguised as advice. She picks up a pen and a small notebook, the one she usually reserves for grocery lists. At the top of a fresh page, she writes 3 words she learned from Ellis. I prefer to. It feels almost childlike, tentative, gentle. But as she writes, something begins to loosen. I prefer to rest when I'm tired. I prefer to speak kindly, even to myself. I prefer to let today be enough. Each sentence lands like a breath. None of them demand. They simply suggest. That's the difference between control and care, she thinks. One tightens, the other invites. She sets the pen down and smiles, surprised by how these small phrases change her posture, her breathing, even the way she looks around the room. Maybe this is what healing sounds like. Not an anthem, but a whisper that's easy to keep. Later, as she gets ready for work, she catches herself starting to spiral. A flash of memory, an email she might have worded wrong, and the old reflex flares. You messed up again. But this time, she notices it mid-sentence, and instead of diving into argument, she pauses, takes a breath, answers herself softly. Maybe, and that's okay. You'll fix it when you can. It's a small exchange, almost invisible, yet it shifts the entire mood of her morning. Every gentle correction rewrites the language of her mind. By the time she steps outside, the air feels different.
Lighter, maybe. Or maybe she's just lighter inside it. She watches the neighborhood wake, the dog walker with earbuds, the barista flipping the open sign, the child dragging a bright blue backpack. There's a rhythm here, she realizes, that has nothing to do with perfection and everything to do with being present. She tucks her hands into her coat pockets, feeling the small notebook against her palm. She likes knowing it's there, a quiet proof of choice. Throughout the day, she keeps practicing. Before a meeting, 3 slow breaths. After a mistake, 1 neutral fact instead of a verdict. At lunch, a silent thank you for her own persistence. No one notices, of course. From the outside, She looks like anyone else answering emails and crossing streets. But inside, she's building a new habit, a softer way of being with herself. When evening comes, she sits again by the mirror, not to check or fix, but simply to see. The reflection isn't perfect, but it's real. It belongs to her. Before bed, she opens her notebook and writes one last line. "Thank you for trying." She stares at it for a moment, then adds a second. Effort counts too. Her handwriting wobbles slightly, but the words feel steady. She closes the notebook and places it beside the mirror, where she'll see it first thing tomorrow. The kettle hums again, that same comforting sound that once filled the quiet after self-criticism. Now it feels different, like background music for a life in progress. Healing, she thinks, isn't about silencing the noise. It's about changing the tone. And as she turns off the light, the mirror holds her reflection just long enough for her to smile at it, not out of pride, but recognition. She's still learning, still imperfect, still worthy. That's more than enough to begin again tomorrow. The morning light arrives quietly, as if it's learning how to enter gently. It slips through the blinds and lands across the bathroom sink, touching the mirror she used to dread.
The glass glows pale gold. For once, she doesn't rush to face it. She moves slowly, almost ceremonially, letting the light find her before she looks back. The air carries the faint scent of soap and sleep. The city hums softly outside. Buses, footsteps, a kettle hissing somewhere down the hall. It's the same soundtrack as always, but it feels different now. The mirror no longer feels like an adversary. It feels like a companion, quiet, steady, waiting. She looks up and meets her reflection. It's the same face, of course, a little uneven, a little tired, undeniably human. But something about the way she sees it has changed. There's no flinch, no quick scan for flaws, just presence. For a long time, she mistook criticism for awareness and gentleness for weakness. She thought kindness would make her complacent, that forgiveness meant lowering the bar. But now she understands. Gentleness isn't the opposite of strength. It's what makes strength sustainable. She leans closer to the mirror and whispers, almost as if greeting an old friend, "Good morning." It's the simplest phrase, yet it feels like a milestone, proof that she can speak to herself without defense, without attack. She brushes her teeth, combs her hair, and notices how her movements have slowed. Not the sluggishness of fatigue, but the pace of care. She's moving through the same rituals as before, but this time, there's no rush to prove. No need to win the morning. Every motion feels like a small act of peacekeeping. When she finishes, she doesn't step away immediately. She studies the way the light catches her eyes, softer than before, still curious, still alive. The mirror fogs slightly from her breath, and she lets it. A thought comes quietly. You don't have to earn your reflection. It lands somewhere deep, like water finding its level. She remembers the first time she realized how cruel her inner voice had become. That dropped toothbrush, the word idiot said without thinking. She smiles at the memory now, not with shame but gratitude. That moment cracked something open. It was the first time she caught herself mid-habit and chose something gentler instead. That's how change began, not with resolutions but with noticing. She thinks of all the small acts that followed. The 3 "I prefer" lines written in her notebook, the whispered "thank you for trying" before bed, the simple pauses before replying to her own self-criticism. None of them were grand, none of them fixed everything, but together they formed a new language. The mirror has witnessed all of it, the fog, the tears, the quiet smiles. And now, it reflects something steady, not perfection, but peace. She tilts her head, considering her own reflection like she might consider a dear friend who's finally resting after a long storm. What will you tell yourself today? She wonders aloud. The question isn't anxious or forced. It's an invitation. Outside, a bird lands on the balcony railing, feathers ruffled against the wind. The sight makes her smile again, this tiny creature, fearless in its ordinariness. It reminds her that being alive has always been enough of an achievement. She turns away from the mirror, but not before whispering one last line to the woman she's learning to treat kindly. Let's make this a soft day. She walks into the kitchen. The kettle hums its familiar tune. The day stretches ahead, full of meetings, small messes, probably more mistakes. But she knows now that none of it has the power to undo her. She pours her coffee and takes a slow sip. The bitterness tastes honest, grounding. At the edge of the counter, the mirror catches her one last time, a passing reflection, mid-laugh at something small and silly. The image is fleeting, but it feels like a closing circle. Will her mirror hear peace or prosecution tomorrow morning? She doesn't know yet, but she does know this. She finally has a choice. And that choice, to listen with kindness,
To speak with care, is what freedom sounds like. She leaves the apartment with that thought tucked quietly in her pocket. The city opens before her, imperfect, noisy, alive. And for the first time in years, so is she.